Hey, hello, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Tobias, and on my channel I tend to talk about music. And since it's a fairly new channel, I've been a bit stuck in the beginning here in the 1980s, and it is a very important decade for me. I think there was a lot of great music released that decade, and it was also the decade where I started to really actively listening to music, buying records and all that great stuff. So there's going to be some focus on the 1980s as a decade. But my intentions for this channel is not to be stuck in one decade solely, like the 1980s. No, I'm going to cover music from any decade, as long as it's music that I'm passionate about, something that I want to share with you guys and talk about. It could be reviews, it could be me getting a new record haul, talking about that, or it could be specials that I'm planning on this channel. Anything really. So today I am doing a review of a record that was originally released in 2007. So folks, we're moving away from the 1980s and going into the wonderful world of Lisa Scott-Lee's Never or Now album. And I'm going to do a bit of a backstory on this one because it was so fascinating of the story, so I couldn't resist going into this one. But if you just want to watch the review of said record, please use the chapter points that I put into this video to just skip ahead and just watch the review if you want. Yeah, so without any further ado, we're going to look at Lisa Scott-Lee, once part of a hugely popular group, at least here in the UK, that split up, and she was now embarking on a solo adventure. So let's kick things off.
Next up, a lady who's used to the chart. She's been dipping in and out of there for years. It's Lisa Scott-Lee.
If you were to ask me a couple of months ago, who is Lisa Scott-Lee? I wouldn't be able to answer you at all. It was just a name among others. And before you turn things off in pure frustration of the fact that I didn't know who Lisa Scott-Lee was, please bear with me for just a couple of minutes. I will tell you the short story here. Late last year, I was browsing some social media, probably Facebook, and there was an ad that said Plastic Pop Records is now re-releasing Sophie Ellis-Bextor's first 4 albums. And my ears perked up because I'm a big fan. And the fact that they stated they will be releasing these not only on CD but on cassette and vinyl as well. So the collector in me, the record collector in me, woke up and I was like, yeah, I have to go over to Plastic Pop Records. Never heard of this label before. It turns out it's a Scottish independent record label. And it turns out as well that they actually did these Sophie Ellis-Bextor releases a couple of years ago, and it was so popular. They got a lot of praise for the pressings, the remastering, the packaging, all of that. And now they're doing the final run of these ones, so you could pre-order them on vinyl or the other 2 formats if you wanted to. So I did that, I pre-ordered them, and while I was there on the Plastic Pop website, I had a look because I was a bit curious of which other artists are on that label. They didn't have too many of them, there was a handful of them, but it was interesting. Artists, bands spanning from the late 1990s up until 2010, 2011, around that time. Interesting era of music in my book. So a couple of them I did recognize. I think there was Wigfield and Entice, if I'm not mistaken. Not too big of a fan of those two, but there was a couple of other artists that I never heard of before. So I went over to Spotify just to have a listen to some of these tracks, and I really liked what I heard. So at some point I was like, okay, I'm going to order an album from each of these artists, but you know, records cost money, unfortunately. So I had to stick with one for now, and it turns out it was Lisa Scott-Lee. The name I never heard of before, but the tracks that I heard, they were really resonating with me. I really thought they were great. So said and done, I ordered that one. And then I looked her up, and of course, as you all know probably, she is part of Steps. But now I know, and if you were to ask me as well, who are the members of Steps just a couple of months ago, I would probably just be able to mention Claire Richards, because the reason is she released what I think was her second solo album last year, which was a covers album of some of her favorite female artists, kind of a tribute album, and it blew me away. And I thought I was never going to say this, that I actually like a cover album, because usually I am really allergic to covers albums, but this one really worked for me. She's doing a great job on that. So Claire Richards I was aware of, but I wouldn't be able to mention any of the other members. Anywho, Lisa Scott-Lee released her first solo record in 2007. And how did this come about? So I started reading up on that, and it's a fascinating story. So I'm going to tell you that story here now. And I'm trying not to be too lengthy and too granular when it comes to the details. I'm just going to go with the basics, because there's lots of ups and downs and twists and turns in this story, so that's why I want to tell you this one. We're going to start in late 2001. This is the point where Steps basically split up. I won't go into the details on who or why and all of that, but there are certain members of Steps that decided they had enough, and that basically split up the group. And you can imagine the shock, the horror perhaps, of some of the fans reacting to this message that Steps was going to split up. They were basically at the height of their career. They were so popular, especially here in the UK. And the shock of some of the members in Steps as well, that wasn't really aware of this thing that was happening. So yeah, fast forward a bit, Claire Richards and one of the male members of Steps, I think he's called H or H, they formed a duo, had some success with that, and then Lisa Scott-Lee as well penned some new tunes, or she already penned them some time back, who knows, not me for certain. But anywho, in 2003 she came in contact with Mercury Records. They have a subsidiary called Fontana, so in some cases where I read up on this, it refers back to Fontana, but it's basically the same label. It's just a subsidiary of Mercury Records. So she came in contact with this record label, and she probably presented some songs, could have had some demos, who knows, or just good contacts. And this is where they said, yeah, we like what we hear, or whatever. So we're going to sign you to a contract with Mercury Records. And said and done, in May of 2003, they released her first single as a solo artist, Lisa Scott-Lee, and her track Lately.
It seems like lately, something's coming over me, baby.
So this one fared really well in the charts, at least according to me. It peaked at number 6. It stayed for 9 weeks in the UK charts. And peaking at number 6, you could see that as failure, because you really wanted a number 1. But there's always a lot of competitions on the charts, of course, in any year. And coming up as a new solo artist as well, it's not the easiest thing to do. And of course, you are a previous member of Steps, and you would have a lot of fan following, you would think. But it's not that simple, right? Because the fans can just do so much. You need to get other people on board as well, listening to your music and being a fan of you, basically. So it doesn't matter how popular you really are. If you come from a group that's split up and you're starting a new solo career, it's a bit tricky, I would assume, at least. So yeah, peaking at number 6 with your first solo single, I think that's a really decent position to be in. Then it was in May of 2003 that they decided to release the second single from Lisa Scott-Lee, and this time around it was called Too Far Gone.
Too far gone, it's been too long.
So this single, it peaked at number 11 in the UK charts and stayed there for 5 weeks. So it just missed the spot of the top 10 there. But the wheels were turning. The record company at this point were already promoting the upcoming debut album from Lisa Scott Lee, which was going to be called Unleashed. And they also sent out some promo samplers, CDs that they sent to DJs or radio stations and all of that, just to promote this upcoming album. But then, for some reason, in late 2003, the record company got cold feet and said, no, we're going to discontinue the contract with Lisa Scott Lee. And from the brief research that I did for this episode, I might have gone a bit deeper on this one, but I think this statement from the label says it all. They found her success might be limited, and I think something else was going on in the background, to be honest. They found it limited, the success of Lisa Scott Lee. How did they do that after 2 singles is my questions, because the first one, like I said, it peaked at number 6, the second at 11, and like I also stated, it's always hard for someone to come up as a new solo artist, even if you had the backing of being in a popular group before. And perhaps that was the fault of the record company, that a lot of people would buy her records because she was in Steps and it was hugely popular and all that. But I don't think it's that easy. So why not give her a break? Peaked at number 6 and number 11 with her first 2 singles. Just release the upcoming album, and if that doesn't work really well, then you can start talking about discontinuing the contract. At least in my book. But that's just my 2 cents about this. Let's continue this story. Then we go into 2004. Lisa is without a contract, and so is another collective or group called the Intenso Project, or just Intenso Project. Never heard of them before either. But they had a song that they penned, and they wanted Lisa to be a guest vocalist on that one. So said and done, they were self-funding the single, and even self-funding the shooting of the video. And the track in question is called Get It On. To be honest, this is not a track that resonated with me at all. There was no hook to me, nothing like that. And on the charts, it peaked at number 23, stayed there for 3 weeks or so. And I think at this point it might have been picked up by Ministry of Sound, their record label side of things. So it did get some publishing, but it didn't stay too long on the charts and didn't chart really well. So that was it, basically. And then we go into 2005 all of a sudden, because there's a big gap here in the story. And I'm sure there was a lot of things happening for Lisa Scott Lee at this time, but music-wise, this is where the next thing happened. MTV announced that they were going to launch a new series that was going to be called Totally Scott Lee. Totally Scott Lee. And this was in the vein of the Osbournes, you might think. That was hugely popular as well. I think that was produced by MTV as well, if I'm not mistaken. And it was going to be following Lisa, her closest family members, and with a focus on Lisa then, of course, because it was all about her getting a new record contract, getting into the charts again and all of that. So that was a main focus of this show. And during this show on MTV, which I think was MTV UK, by the way, she got signed by a smaller label called Concept Records. And they had someone pen a new single for her, basically, called Electric. And what I gather from my, like I said, brief research around this subject is that Lisa wasn't really keen on releasing this track. She had another track that was called Never or Now that she wanted to release instead. But the record company was adamant that this track, Electric, was a new hot thing and they wanted to release it with her. So said and done, it was released just before Christmas in 2005, and that is something as well that I think Lisa objected to. She thinks it was a bit rushed, the single and all that, but they wanted to cram it in before this MTV show wrapped up, basically. So Electric was released. Yeah, this one does differ from her first two singles. It's a bit more of the electro pop track, really. And I'm not a huge fan of dropping genres left to right. To me, it's usually just pop or dance pop. If it's good music, it's good music, like I always say. But it is just to describe the whole track for you. If you get electropop, you know what I'm talking about. It got famous really big, I would say, in 2000 when Kylie Minogue released Light Years, that fantastic album with hit after hit on it. And then later on, I think a year after, she released Fever. It's that kind of electro pop that I'm talking about. And I might be way out when it comes to genres here, but I'm calling it electro pop at least. And this is, like I said, released in 2005, and no, it didn't fare very well on the charts. It peaked at number 13, stayed only for 3 weeks. And I think in Lisa's head, or she might have said it to someone, it's like, yeah, I told you so. We should have gone with Never or Now, the single that I proposed. But hey-oh, that's just the way it is. I think Electric is a decent track, but it's just a bit misplaced in time and space. That's just my 2 cents on that. But the record company pushed on. They had big plans of promoting Electric in Japan, Australia, South Africa and Germany, because those were probably the countries where it got a lot of airplay, and they found a lot of people be interested in this single. So, said and done, it turns out they only sent her to promote this in South Africa and Germany after all. So they skipped out on Japan and Australia for some reason. And then in December of 2005, on Lisa Scott Lee's official website, she released a freebie track. Anyone could download it, and there was a bit of a Christmas greeting from Lisa to her fans, and the track in question that you could download was Boy on the Dance Floor. A bit of a retro disco sounding track, pretty decent in my book. So that was Christmas of 2005. And then there is another gap before anything really happens music-wise. And this is in October of 2006. This is where she is announced to be on a famous popular show here in the UK called Dancing on Ice. Still very popular here. Never saw it myself, but I gather it's a lot of celebrities being paired up with professional skaters, and they have figure skating going on, and you're judged or booted out or whatever. So, but like I said, it was hugely popular, so she got a lot of media buzz around this. So the record label, they are taking advantage of this one and saying, look, we are going to release that unreleased album from back in the Mercury days that was supposed to be called Unleashed. But now they're changing the title to Never or Now, which alludes to that single that Lisa wanted to release as well. So they have big plans, and those plans are realized in June of 2007. When the album is released digitally in most countries. The only countries that they actually released a physical record of this one, a CD, was in South Africa, Belgium and Netherlands, I think it was. Those were the only places where you could get a physical. All other places had downloads for this one. And eventually you could actually import those ones through Amazon or other websites in the UK at least. So some people got their hands on the physical medium as well here. But the rest of us had to download those tracks. And I looked for chart positions for this album, and I couldn't find anything anywhere. I really tried, I promise you, but I couldn't find any chart positions at all for this one. So I just have to assume it didn't go very well with the release of this album, sadly. So it just fizzled out, and then fast forward a couple of years from 2007 to 2011, this is a point where Steps decided to reunite. And still today they are reunited in having big success, especially here in the UK. I think they might be even more popular today than they ever was. So I'm really glad for them all, and for Lisa as well. She's still in the music industry, and that might have been the end of this saga, right? But then a year ago, or little over a year ago actually, because it was in February of 2023, some people in Plastic Pop Records were probably having a discussion saying, do you remember that Lisa Scott Lee album that they released in 2007? That is a hidden gem, isn't it? So why don't we just re-release that one and put some extra tracks on it as well? Brilliant idea. And I do agree with that. That is a really brilliant idea, because you don't see a lot of these obscure, forgotten albums being re-released ever again, especially from artists that only had one solo album out at some point. So I'm really thankful for that one, and this is the point where I'm gonna go into the review of said album. Yeah, so here it is. Here is the Unleashed Deluxe edition of Lisa Scott Lee's album Never or Now. And we're going to go into the packaging itself, but first I want to talk about the track listing just briefly. And I just want to point out, it does include the original 13 tracks that were included on the 2007 album. And then we have a bunch of extra tracks here as well, and we're going to talk about them as well. And if you ever see me looking down here at some point, it's because I have a track listing in front of me, because I can't really read this backwards in the camera here. So yeah, just mindful of that one. So let's start out with the first 3 tracks on this one. It's her first 3 singles. So we'll start out with Lately, and then we have Too Far Gone. And these 2 were released in 2003, and let's call them, just for the sake of it, Euro House. It's very up-tempo, it's produced to make you dance, it's something for the dance floor, and they are brilliant singles in my book. They got those essential hooks, especially to the choruses, that really stays with you. You can't help yourself by singing along and perhaps do some dancing as well when no one else is watching, or just let it out there on the dance floor in pubs and clubs around the country. Who knows? Yeah, brilliant tracks, and especially Too Far Gone, the second single, is probably my favorite one. I really like the production of that one, how they layer sounds throughout the song, and it's very subtle, but it's there, and it just builds up, and it just creates this beautiful track, Too Far Gone. I really like those 2. Then we have Electric, the third track, and it's the third single from Lisa Scott Lee. And if you didn't hear my history leading up to this album, I'm just going to tell you briefly. It's a bit of a different track. Let's call it electropop for the sake of it. Think Kylie's Light Years album with a lot of hits on it, and then after that Fever with Can't Get You Out of My Head. That kind of music, at least to me, that's what it sounds like. So let's call it electropop. And I think it came a bit too late, because it didn't do very well on the chart, really. It didn't stay there on the charts too long. And if they were to release it a year and a half earlier, I think it would have done better on the charts, but that's my 2 cents about that one. Still, I think the track holds up. I think it's a good track with a good hook as well. Not as good as the other 2 tracks, the other 2 singles, but still a good track. Then we go to the 4th track on this one, Back in Time. One of my favorites on this album. I love the bass line. It's a killer bass line, and I think it's actually played on electric bass, not a synthesizer, but I could be wrong, but it does sound like it. And it also got some really beautiful guitars in it, and you blend that with Lisa's beautiful voice, and you got this atmospheric house track. So yeah, there you go. There's another genre for you. And then we round up side A of this one with Obscenely Delicious, another great track with a great hook. So it's all about the dancing on side A, and I'm really delighted about this one. When then we flip it over because this is a vinyl, so we go to the B-side and we find Boy on the Dance Floor. That's another great track. It's a bit of a retro disco style track, and this was the track that Lisa released as a freebie to her fans via her website in 2005, in December 2005. So you can download it for free, and it's included here. It's a good track, I think. And then you have Give You My Love, it's called, another dance track with a really good hook in the chorus, and the same goes for the next track, which is called Make It Last Forever. Also think it's got a great hook to it. And then we go on to Sleazy, which is another great track. So what I'm saying here is that we have a good collection on the first LP here, a really good collection of dance tracks, very much of its time, nothing groundbreaking of course, but they all got great hooks in them, great melodies, and I think the production as well holds up. So that's really good. And then we come to the last track on the B-side, because I just said that the first LP here is really solid. This is a weak point of it. It's a ballad. It's called I'll Wait For You. And I'm not averse to a good ballad, but this one I feel is a bit bland, really forgetful. Yeah, is that a word? Anyhow, let's go on to LP number 2, the C side of things as it was. And now we go into You're No Good For Me. And then it's followed by Rush and Never or Now. And these are the last tracks from the original album from 2007. And if you saw my history leading up to this one, I mentioned that instead of Electric, Lisa actually wanted to release a track called Never or Now. And that is, of course, included here. And that's the title of the album and all that. But these tracks are so different from the rest of the album. They are not really dance pop anymore. It's not Eurohouse. It's more akin of what I would think that Kelly Clarkson would release at the time. It really sounds like that, and I'm not really keen on that, but I do respect that, because in a way you can see this as a compilation of sorts. Even back in 2007, because her first singles were released in 2003, and then the third one in 2005, and then there's a span of a couple of years there until the album is actually released. And Lisa probably penned a lot of songs during this time, and perhaps she picked up different influences. She wanted to do something different, and the Kelly Clarkson route was probably what she was looking for, and that's why she wanted to release Never Now, the track, instead of Electric, because she wanted to change the way she was doing things. She already did the dance thing in 2003, now she wanted to change up things. So these tracks are of course included here, but they break up the albums so badly, I think. They could be good on their own for people who really enjoy that kind of music, but if you're into club music, dance, pop, this really breaks the rhythm of it all. Yeah, that's the best way I can put it, really. But I do understand why this was done, change of style and all of that. So I'm not really keen on these last tracks from the original track listing. Let's just park it there. But then we go into the bonus tracks here, and it's gonna pick up speed, I promise you. This is a good one. So the first track is I'm Burning, which was actually the B-side of her single Lately. And I'm saying B-side here. I know it was released on CD singles back then, so it's probably the second track. But just for the sake of it, I will call it the B-side. And it's a decent track, I think. It's good. Not as good as Lately, of course, but it is a B-side. It's not supposed to be as good as the A-side, right? Very rarely the B-side is better than the A-side, so it's good. It's a decent track. And then we go to the next one, That's That, and that was the B-side for her second single, Too Far Gone. And just the same with this one, it's a decent track, not as good as the A track, but I really appreciate them including the B-sides here, or the second tracks as it was from the singles. It's really, really good. And then we flip it over. It's time to flip over the LP to the D side, and we have Don't You Want My Number. And Don't You Want My Number was the B side for her third single, Electric. And once again, I think it's a good track. It's got some good hooks in it, and yeah, decent track, good. It's picking up speed here. And then we come to a real gem here. It's a track called You Sure Do. And this was taken from a sampler or a promo that was sent out at some point. So it was an exclusive track for that one. It was never released anywhere else, and it's included here. And it's a really, really good song. I think it stands out. Very dance-oriented once again. And yeah, I like it. And then we go to the next track, which is 24/7, featuring Skywalkers. And I probably should have researched this better, but at some point Skywalkers probably released this, featuring Lisa, of course. But they have included it here, and it's another great track. Really, really good. And then we have the real gem of this one. It's called Burnt Out and Falling, of course. And it's produced by Chicane or Chicane, not really sure how to pronounce that. I know he's a big producer, remixer, DJ and all that. And he has this kind of a Balearic style to his music. And this is no exception. It's a bit of a Balearic taste to it. And I read somewhere it was actually penned for Steps at some point, but they rejected the track. Lisa recorded it instead, and it's on here, and it is a real gem. Just imagine lounging in Ibiza with a cold drink in your hand, and you feel the warm breeze and all that. That's the feeling I get from this track. Really, really good one. And then we round things off with No Other Day, which is another exclusive sampler track from back in the day. It's good to have these rare tracks and B-sides, like I said. Really appreciate that. So on a whole, I think it's a great album. It's just those last tracks from the original track listing that I'm not really fond of, because they break the pace. It's not really cohesive with the rest of the album, but I do get where she was coming from, Lisa. So really good. So it's a big thumbs up for me, and a big thumbs up to Plastic Pop Records, who actually produced this re-release. And as you can see, they are done a good job with reproducing the original cover for it. And since I picked up the vinyl variant, it's a double vinyl, and therefore it's also a gatefold, of course. So we got a lovely picture there of Lisa mirrored on both sides. And then the back we already seen with the track listing and another picture. And also comes with glossy inner bags as well. Really nicely done with some promo pictures from back in the day. We got the track listing here with the credits and everything. And then on the back on this one, we have this lovely picture of Lisa as well. And then on the second one, the same track listing, credits, some promo photos. And then if we turn it over, we have like a thank you letter from Lisa, where she tells us about some of the background around this album, and she thanks all her fans for being there, supporting her, and a lot of other people as well. A really nice touch to it all, and it's a really nice packaging of this album. They've done a great job, and I opted in for the orange opaque vinyl. You can also get it on purple vinyl if you feel like it. But I think it went very well with the design overall with this orange. So that's why I opted in for this one. But yeah, it sounds really good. I have to agree with a lot of other people who review this. It's really a good sounding one. They did a good job with the mastering and the pressing as well. Nice and quiet vinyl. So overall, like I said, this is a big thumbs up. For this one. I think if you are curious about this one, go to your nearest streaming service, stream a couple of these tracks, and if you like what you hear, go to Plastic Pop Records and order this album. It's really great. You can also get it on CD, of course, where you get a couple of extra tracks with some remixes on them and so forth and so on. So yeah, it's really, really good. Do yourself a favor, go over there and support an independent label. They're doing a really great job. And no, I am not sponsored by them in any shape or form. I just love what they are doing. I'm really excited about this label and looking forward to what they're going to do in the future. But that was my take on this album. The story of what happened leading up creating this album in 2007. And don't take my word for everything here, because like I said, I did some brief research on this. There are other people out there that are big fans and much more knowledgeable about Lisa than me. So go out there and do your own research, or join a Lisa forum or something like that to get some more information. And please correct me if I got anything wrong down in the comments. I would really appreciate that. But that's it for me for now. That was a long review. But I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please give it a thumbs up. And if you didn't, give it a thumbs down. I'm really after your honest opinion here. And if you really like what I'm doing here, please consider subscribing as well to my channel. I would really appreciate it. So, what did you think about this? Get the comments going down there, and until we see each other, take care of yourself, and as usual, adjö!